I saw my mother's ring glint in a stranger's hand at my own front door. My breath caught. My hands were steady but cold. Before I tell you everything, come close and sit with me for a few minutes. Smash that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love knowing where your kitchens and living rooms are, and I'll be here with a warm cup, reading your notes later tonight. It was my mother's ring. It was part of her voice, her laughter, her stories. I had promised to keep it safe. The porch light made a small circle on the step. The woman at my door held the ring between two careful fingers, the way you hold something you are not sure you should be touching. The gold looked softer under the light, like a memory. Somewhere inside the house, the hallway clock ticked, ticked, ticked. I could feel the cool air on my face, and still I kept my voice calm. "If you're cold," I said gently, "please come in." She looked past me for a second, as if waiting for someone else to speak first. Her eyes were kind. She was not the problem. The problem was the story that had brought her to my door. If you are listening from a quiet room, or on a bus, or with dishes in the sink and the kettle humming, I'm glad you're here. Maybe it is late where you are. Maybe you are tired. I am too. But I want to tell you this in a soft way, the way a friend would. I want to tell you what I felt in that moment when the past and the present stood on my front step together. I knew that ring by the tiny scar on the band where my mother once caught it on a wire fence when we were picking berries. I knew it by the way it sat in the curve of a palm, like it had found home there many times. I had held it to my cheek on long nights after she passed. I had kept it in a cedar box, wrapped in a piece of her old scarf. I had promised her, in my heart, that I would keep it safe. The woman at my door shifted her weight and opened her mouth to speak. I raised a hand, just a little, to show her that I was not angry. I was simply listening. I was standing in the doorway of my own life, and something precious was asking to be let back in. I will tell you how the ring left the box, and how it found its way to that stranger's hand. I will tell you how trust bent, how my heart broke a little, and how it mended, not perfectly, but strong. This is a story about love, hurt, and what I did when I found out it was my daughter-in-law at the other side of my front door, trying to let go of what was never hers. Before that night at the door, life in my house was quiet and steady. I am a widow. It has been almost 6 years now. You do not notice how big a quiet can be until there is no second cup on the table, no second pair of slippers by the mat. My home is modest and warm, with old wood that creaks in familiar places and windows that catch the afternoon sun just right. I like the sound of the kettle, the soft hum that tells me something kind is on its way. My mornings have their own rhythm. I put the kettle on, feed the cat that still looks for my husband in the hallway, and open the back door to the small garden. There are herbs in pots, and a rose bush my mother gave me when Daniel was born. I talk to the plants a little because it calms me. Then I sit with my tea and a piece of toast, and I read the headlines or a few pages of a book, and I let the day begin slowly. Daniel is my son. He was the child who took things apart to see how they worked, then tried to put them back together without needing help. He grew into a man who fixes things when they squeak or wobble. The kitchen cabinet on the left used to make a little bark every time you opened it. One Saturday, he stood there for an hour with a screwdriver, humming to himself, until the bark softened into silence. I watched him from the table and felt the kind of pride that stings behind the eyes. He still laughs with his whole face, the way he did when he was 10 and found a frog by the pond. Sometimes when he visits, he pulls old photo albums from the shelf and we sit cross-legged on the living room rug. He'll point to a photo of him in that bright sweater his grandmother knitted and say, "I cannot believe you let me walk outside in that." And I will say, "You loved that sweater. You wore it until it tried to turn itself into a scarf." We laugh, and the house feels full. Then there is Lena. The first time I met her, she brought a small jar of honey from a local market and held it with both hands like a gift she wasn't sure was good enough. Her eyes are bright and careful at the same time. Her smile is a little nervous, but it warms as she talks. When she speaks to you, she tilts her head and listens. She has careful hands, the kind of hands that set a cup down gently so it does not clink, the kind of hands that fold a blanket so the edges meet. I liked her right away. They came to stay with me last spring. It was practical and it made sense. They were saving for a deposit and there had been a car repair that swallowed more money than expected. There were student loans and there were plans that needed time. I have a small guest room at the end of the hall with a soft bed and a window that looks onto the maple tree. I told them, stay, take your time. You can stack your hopes in the corner and we will build a little table around them. I meant it. My home felt bigger with them in it. There is something I should say here, and I want to say it plainly. After my husband passed, I had a fall in the kitchen. It was not serious, but it frightened me. You learn to be careful after a fall. Daniel installed small security cameras for me in the shared rooms, one in the living room, one in the hallway, and one over the front door. Little eyes in the corners. The tiny lights blink sometimes, like fireflies. They helped me feel safe when I was alone. They helped me remember, too. When I put things down and forgot where, I could check and find my own footsteps. We spoke about the cameras. I told Daniel, of course. I thought I had told Lena enough, but maybe I did not. I did not hide them. They are quiet but not invisible. Still, I should have said more clearly. I thought I had time to explain everything. Everyday life with them had its gentle chorus. Mornings, I would boil water, and Lena would already be in the kitchen, setting out 2 cups. She likes her tea very hot with no sugar. Daniel would slip in, kiss my cheek, and cut fruit for a small bowl to share. Sometimes, when the sun was soft, we ate toast and nectarines at the small table by the window and watched the light move across the fence. Lena is someone who makes herself useful. In the first week, she rearranged the spices so the labels faced forward and sorted the drawer with spoons so the little ones did not get stuck under the big ones. "I thought this might make it easier for you," she said, hopeful and a little shy. I smiled. "Thank you," I said. "I can always find the cumin now." Later, I moved a few things back without even thinking. Not because she did anything wrong, but because I am used to reaching in and finding things in a certain place. Old habits. She noticed. Her mouth made a small line, like a thread pulled too tight. I felt a pinch of guilt. Our small talk was careful, like placing a glass on a polished table. I would ask about her work, and she would ask about my garden. We learned each other's rhythms in small steps. In the evenings, if we were all home, we sat in the living room with a show playing softly and our phones in our hands. Sometimes the house breathed with us. Sometimes it felt like a pause we were learning to share. In my den, there is a desk with a drawer that locks. It is not a grand room, just a small space with a bookshelf, the printer, and a lamp that throws a warm circle on the wood. In that drawer, I kept a cedar box. It smells like old stories. That is where I kept the pieces of jewelry that carry voices. There is my mother's ring. You already know about the tiny scar on the band where she caught it on a fence. She wore it to weddings and to church, and when she told me to be brave, even when brave felt like a dress too big for me. When I was little, she would let me hold it while she brushed my hair. "This ring," she would say, "has heard all my secrets." Later, when she grew older and tired, she told me, "When I am gone, keep this safe, not in a bank but in your heart." I promised. There are pearl earrings I wore on my wedding day, small and soft, like drops of light. My sister helped me put them on while I looked at my reflection and tried to see the woman who would be a wife in a few hours. The pearls have a way of catching the eye in a kind way, not a showy way. I wore them the day Daniel graduated, too. They felt like gentle company. There's also a silver hairpin that was my grandmother. She wore her hair in a bun most days, but in the evenings, sometimes she would sit by the radio and let her hair down and brush it 100 strokes. The pin has a simple curve and a tiny flower etched in. As a child, I would touch the cool metal and feel like I held a piece of time in my palm. As a gardener now, I sometimes tucked my hair up with it when I wanted to feel close to her, as if her steady hands could guide my clumsy pruning. I kept the cedar box in that locked drawer not because I did not trust the people around me, but because I had learned what it is to lose, and I could not bear to lose those stories. After my husband died, I became more careful. When grief lives in a house, it makes you hold things tighter for a while. You keep lists. You double-check the door. You make sure the box is in the drawer and the drawer is locked. I will admit something else. Since my husband passed, I have small lapses, nothing serious, just moments when my mind puts a set of keys on a shelf and closes the door behind them, then pretends not to know where they are. Grief does this. Age helps it. The cameras helped me remember. Once I watched a clip of myself pat my pockets, laugh at myself, and lift a tea towel to find my glasses. I told Daniel about these little moments, and he never made me feel foolish. I did not think to tell Lena every detail. I did not think I needed to. Life was calm most days, steady. I thought we were finding our way, and in many ways we were. I held my routines like a blanket and let the days unfold. I did not know there was a thread pulling loose. I did not see it at first. Threads are like that. They do not yell, they whisper. The first small tension was quiet and quick, like a draft under a door. Lena had wiped down the kitchen counters and lined the jars along the back, all in a neat row. It looked tidy. It looked new. When she went upstairs to take a call, I reached out without thinking and pulled the sugar back to its old corner, near the kettle, where my hand finds it before my eyes do. When she came back, her eyes flicked to the jar, and I saw her shoulders tighten just a little. "I'm trying to make it easier for you," she said later, soft, almost under her breath as we rinsed plates at the sink. "You are," I said. "I just have my ways, dear, old habits." She nodded. "I get it." But I could feel the air shift. It was no storm, just a small cloud passing over the sun. I told myself I would try to be more flexible. I meant it. It is hard to change the path your hand takes through a kitchen after 30 years. Money in our house was a quiet river under the floorboards. You did not see it, but you felt it sometimes, in the way we chose the cheaper butter, or in the way Daniel checked his phone before dinner to see if he needed to approve a charge. Daniel started working late more often. "Just for a while," he told me. "We'll patch the holes and steady the boat." He said it with a smile, but there was a line on his forehead I did not remember from before. Lena took calls in the guest room with the door almost closed. I do not listen for other people's private words, but small words carry in a quiet house. One afternoon, as I folded laundry at the table, I heard her say, "I know, but we don't have it yet. Can you ask the hospital for a plan? I can send something this Friday." There was a pause, and I could hear the soft sound people make when they try not to cry. "It will be okay," she said. "We'll make it okay." When she came out, her hands were steady, but they trembled at the tips. "I put the t-shirts on your bed," I said, offering an ordinary sentence like a step stool. "Thank you," she said. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," I said, and I did. I wanted to do something, even if it was only to fold corners to meet corners and make small, neat piles out of something tangled. The first thing that went missing was the silver hairpin I use when I garden. It sits in a small dish on my dresser, near a jar of buttons and a loose marble that used to live in Daniel's pocket. One morning, I reached for it and touched air. I checked the dish. I checked the tray where I put my watch at night. I looked in the bathroom and under the bed, and then I laughed at myself and went outside with a cheap clip instead. It is easy to misplace small things. I told myself that. I let it go. I told myself I would find it where I least expected, in the way lost things like to be found, as if they had been hiding and needed a moment to be brave enough to show themselves again. Later that week, I could not find my keys, and I felt that little flicker of worry I get sometimes. I sat down and opened the app for the living room camera to see if I could see where I had put them yesterday. I watched a small square of my life flicker in the corner of my tablet. There I was, coming in from the garden, setting my keys on the coffee table, then picking them up again to open a package and slipping them into the pocket of my sweater. They were on the back of the chair. I smiled at myself and stood to retrieve them. Before I closed the app, I saw Lena cross the room with one of my scarves. She held it up to her throat, and the ends fell down like soft water. She looked at herself in the reflection of the dark TV screen and smiled, a small private smile, the kind you give yourself when you are trying on a life and hopping at fits. She folded the scarf back and placed it carefully on the arm of the couch. I did not judge her for it. I know what it is to touch something soft when you are tired. I closed the app and went to make tea. A few days later, a delivery came while I was in the garden. When I came in, I saw the brown box by the den door and my den door slightly open. It surprised me because I try to keep that door closed. I pushed it gently and looked inside. Everything seemed as it should be. The cedar box sat in its place in the drawer. The envelope with stamps was on the desk. I told myself Lena must have brought the package in and placed it in the den because it looked like paper for the printer. It was a kind thing to do. I sent her a message. "Thank you for bringing the delivery inside." Later that evening, when I was checking the camera to see if the neighbor's dog had made the muddy prints on the porch again, I saw the moment she had opened the door. She looked around as if to make sure it was okay, then stepped inside with the box. She set it on the desk, and as she turned, Her gaze fell on the drawer where the cedar box sits. The camera angle caught her hand resting on the wood for a second, a soft touch, as if she were touching a page in a book she wanted to return to. Then she pulled her hand back, closed the door, and left. I sighed, and I told myself that curiosity is part of being human. I have touched things in people's houses gently, too, books, frames, a beautiful bowl, just to feel the hum of their story. The second missing thing was one of my pearl earrings. I reached for the little box and felt the air again, but this time it was half empty. One pearl lay alone, smooth and patient. I got down on my knees and looked under the dresser, under the chair, through the drawers. I checked the pockets of the sweater I wore the last time I had the pair on. I checked the laundry basket and the cuff of a cardigan. No luck. My heart thudded in that slow, heavy way it does when worry arrives without knocking. But my mind spoke to it like a calm friend. Do not accuse. Do not rush. I sat on the edge of the bed and counted my breaths and told myself that pearls roll and hide, and I would find it tucked into a sheet or a shoe. I smoothed my skirt and went to make dinner. The next day, I found a small note on the kitchen table in Lena's careful handwriting. Found this, sorry if I messed something up. Beside it lay the missing pearl earring, a little wetter than usual, as if it had been washed by accident. I felt relief like a door opening. Thank you, I said later when she came in from a walk. I thought I had lost my mind. It got caught in the washing machine filter, she said. I think it came off in the laundry. I'm really sorry. It happens, I said. I'm just glad it came back to me. I put the kettle on. We stood side by side, holding warm cups, and looked out the window at the maple leaves shivering in the breeze. It was a peaceful moment, and I tucked it into my pocket like a small stone to hold for later. In the afternoons, sometimes I would pass by the guest room on my way to the laundry and see Lena photographing small things on a blanket. Shoes, a handbag, books she had already read. She had a soft light from the window, and she arranged each item so it looked loved but ready to move on. I'm listing some things, she said once, a little embarrassed. We have too much anyway. That looks nice, I said. Someone will be glad. I felt tenderness for her. She wanted to contribute, to take weight off Daniel's shoulders, to make a space that did not depend only on someone else's home and someone else's kindness. I remember being young and counting coins at the table, folding bills, making plans, then sending a little extra to my sister when she needed it. I wanted to say, let me help, but I didn't want to make her feel small. One night, much later, when the house was asleep and the clock in the hallway ticked as if it were watching its own steps, I could not settle my mind. The kind of restlessness came that makes you stand up and straighten a picture that was already straight. I walked to the kitchen for water, then sat with my tablet and scrolled through a book, my eyes skipping over the words. I do not know what made me open the camera app. Maybe it was the night's quiet asking for a distraction. Maybe it was the small ache about the hairpin I had still not found. I saw the hallway, lit only by the nightlight near the baseboard. The little camera light blinked like it was breathing. Then on the screen, Lena appeared. She was barefoot. Her steps were slow, careful. She went to the hook by the back door where I keep the spare key to the den, and she stood there for a long second before taking it. She held it in her hand like a small bird. Then she walked to the den door and opened it. The camera on the hallway pointed toward the doorway of the den, and it caught just enough. The lamp inside glowed. I could see her move to the desk. I could see her open the drawer. I could see the cedar box in her hands. She stood with it for a moment as if it were warm. She lifted the lid. Her shoulders shook once, a small ripple. She took my mother's ring out and held it to her chest, pressed against her skin. Tears slipped down her face, catching the light like the pearls had, like water finds the lowest place. I felt my chest ache in a way I had not felt in a long time. Not anger, more like a bruising sadness, like when you hear someone you love tell a lie and you know they are hurting. She stayed there for a while, just breathing, then placed the ring back in the box. She closed the box carefully, returned it to the drawer, locked it, and put the key back on the hook. Her hands were steady. She wiped her face and stood in the hallway for a full minute before she went back to the guest room. I did not sleep after that. I lay in the dark, listening to the house settle, and thought about the ways people ask for help without words. I thought about my mother's ring and about Lena's tears, and about how trust is not a rock you stand on but a bridge you keep repairing together, plank by plank. I wondered if I had failed her by not saying, "I see you, and I can hold a little of what you carry." In the morning, I baked bread. It is the thing I do when I need the kitchen to hold me up. I measured flour and salt and yeast, and I added the warm water and let my hands do the thinking. When I turned the dough and set it to rise, the house smelled like comfort. Lena came in, her hair in a braid, and sat at the table. "Smells good," she said, and her smile reached only halfway. "You can always ask me for help," I said, careful, a little afraid to sound like I was accusing. She looked at me and nodded. "Thank you," she said, and then changed the subject. She asked about the roses. She asked if we needed milk. She lifted the lid of the pot on the stove and said, "This stew looks nice." A quiet wall stood between us. Not a high wall, just a low one, the kind you can step over if you know where to put your feet. I wanted to find the step. I did not want to assume I could. That afternoon, Daniel worked late again. I watered the plants and sorted the mail and looked at the den door more often than usual. I unlocked the drawer and checked the cedar box. The ring slept there, back in its nest of scarf. I closed the box and locked the drawer and put the key in my pocket, then put it back on the hook where it belongs, because I do not like to keep secrets even from myself. In the evening, the clouds hung low, and the house felt small, like a small boat in a big lake. I made tea for Lena and for myself. We sat across from each other with our cups and watched the steam rise and disappear. "How was your day?" I asked. "Busy," she said. "I took photos of some books. I might sell the boots I never wear." "If they pinch your toes, let them go," I said, trying to make her smile. She did a little. "They do pinch," she said. I wanted to say, "Tell me about the call," or "What scares you the most right now?" Instead, I said, "Do you want honey?" and passed her the jar she had brought me the first time we met. She spooned a little into her tea and watched it dissolve. That night, when I turned out the lights, I stood for a moment by the hallway camera, looking at its small blink. I thought about how it had been installed to keep me safe, to help me remember, to let Daniel check on me when I fell asleep on the couch with the TV whispering. I thought about how it had seen more than I expected. I wondered if I had not told Lena enough, not just about the camera, but about my own soft places, the places where I could hold her worry without drowning. Before I went to bed, I checked the little dish again for my grandmother's hairpin, even though I knew it would not be there. I checked the pocket of the sweater I had worn weeks ago, as if time would give it back just because I asked nicely. No pin. I sighed and told the night, "I miss small things, it's all right." The night said nothing, as usual. In the days that followed, the routines kept us moving like a gentle current. We said good mornings and good nights. We cooked, and we cleaned, and we folded. We passed each other in the hallway, and I thought of that little piece of metal hanging by the back door, and how easy it is to take a key and open a door when you think no one will mind if it is for a good reason. I wanted to ask what good reason had come to visit in the middle of the night. I wanted to ask if it had left when morning came. The wall between us did not get higher, but it did not get lower either. It stood, quiet and patient, waiting for someone to lift a stone and set it aside. I told myself it would be me. I told myself I would choose a gentle moment, a cup of tea, a late afternoon. I told myself I would say, "We are family. We can be clumsy together." I did not know the moment would be chosen for me, at the front door, with a stranger's hand holding my mother's ring to the light. I did not know that all the small threads would pull together into a knot I could not ignore. I only knew there was a question gathering in the air, and I would have to answer it soon. The day everything shifted came quietly, like a chair moved half an inch to the left. I went into the den to print a recipe Aisha had sent me and opened the drawer where the cedar box lives. It was sitting just a little off-center, not in its usual square shadow on the wood, and it made something in me sit up. I took the box out, lifted the lid, and held my mother's ring in my palm. It felt different, as if it had sighed and settled into a new story without asking me first. I cannot explain it well, because it was not the weight or the shine. It was like picking up a book you know by heart and finding one page thinner than it used to be. I turned the ring and looked at the tiny scar on the band, the one from the fence so many summers ago. I placed it back in the box, closed the lid, and set the box carefully in the drawer, more centered this time. I closed the drawer and stood with my hand on the handle for a long moment, listening to my own breathing. My fingers trembled a little as I sat down at the desk. I told myself I was being silly, that everything was fine, that a box cannot be off-center enough to move the entire floor. Still, I opened the camera app on my tablet. The timeline hovered at the bottom, a thin ribbon with dots like small birds perched along it. I scrolled back with slow, careful movements, stopping when a little motion icon appeared near the den doorway. On the screen, I watched the past step into the room. It was Lena. She moved with care, like someone walking through a dream that might break if she breathed too hard. She spread a white towel near the window for the soft light and opened the drawer. I saw her lift the cedar box and open it. She took my mother's ring out and placed it on the towel, and the gold caught the daylight in a way that made my heart burn. She took careful photos, turning the ring, capturing the tiny scar, the curve, the shine. Between pictures, she held it, and I saw her whisper something. I turned up the volume a little, and the quietest thread of sound reached me. "Please let this be enough," she said, and the words settled on my skin like cold water and warm salt at the same time. She wasn't speaking to me or to herself alone. She was speaking to a need that was bigger than both of us. When she finished, she placed the ring back in the box, closed it, and sat with her hands in her lap for a few seconds, breathing. Then she put the box away and left the den, and the light in the towel folded itself back into the room. I watched the clip again, not to punish myself, but because I wanted to be sure I had seen what I had seen. The white towel like a small sea, the ring like a boat that did not know where it was going, and Lena adrift. I closed the app and sat still. The house hummed softly, the sound of the refrigerator and the quiet traffic outside, and somewhere in that hum was my mother's voice asking, "What will you do with this?" I did not know yet. I only knew that my heart had cracked on a fault line I hadn't known was there. I stood up and made tea because it is the thing I know to do when decisions are far away and feelings are close. I took my cup to the kitchen table and opened my laptop. I thought about the photos I had seen. I thought about the way Lena had lined up her shoes and books on that blanket in the guest room. I typed the name of the local marketplace into the search bar and hit enter. The page bloomed with pictures, a thrift of other people's pasts, and I wondered which square would be mine. I typed vintage gold ring and scrolled slowly. Bracelets flashed by, rings that looked nothing like my mother, a few that came close, and then one that made my breath leave my body all at once. The band had a tiny scar near the bottom, easy to miss if you did not know to look. The photo was soft and careful, the way you photograph something you love even as you say goodbye. The description said, "Family piece, good condition, needs a new home." It did not say what it was to me. How could it? My hand moved to the printer without me thinking, and I clicked print. The machine warmed, then fed the paper through, and the image slid out in slow lines. The rustle sounded loud in the quiet room. I held the page and stared at the small picture of my heart. I placed the print on the table and pressed my palm on it, wanting it to be real so I could do something real, too. While I stood there, the kitchen tablet lit up with a soft chime. A message banner floated across the top from the Marketplace app that both Lena and I had on our devices. "Pick up at 6, it said, followed by a small smile and a name I did not recognize. My own face reflected in the black gloss of the screen, and for a moment I looked like a stranger to myself. I did not touch the tablet. I stepped back and watched the words fade as the screen went dark again. I could feel my pulse in my wrists. The timeline in my mind shifted, as if the day had drawn a straight line to the evening and pinned it there like a note that could not be missed. 6 o'clock became a bell that would ring whether I wanted it to or not. I thought about calling Daniel at work, but I knew he would worry and leave early, and part of me did not want to shake his day yet. I thought about calling Aisha and asking her to come sit with me, but she lives across town and her knees ache when she drives at dusk. I considered sending a message to Lena that said, "Please don't do this," but words on a screen felt small in the face of what was happening. I had planned to go to Aisha that afternoon with a container of soup and a stack of magazines. I even had a small bag by the door. Instead, at 5:30, I picked up my keys and walked outside. I got into my car and drove to the end of the street, then turned and parked at the curb across from my house. The maple tree made a dark shape against the pale sky. I could see my front step from where I sat. I turned off the engine and listened to the tick of the cooling car. The air was cool enough that my breath fogged the window when I leaned forward. I wiped a circle clear with the sleeve of my sweater and watched the small square of my porch light up as the timer came on. At 10 to 6, a woman in a gray coat walked down the sidewalk, looking at her phone, then at house numbers, then up at my gate. She stopped, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, and looked toward my door with the cautious hope of someone who does not want to be where she is, but needs to be. At 6, my front door opened. Lena stood in the doorway, and even from across the street I could see that her hands were folded in front of her, one thumb rubbing circles over the other. The buyer stepped inside the gate, and they spoke for a moment. Then Lena held something small in her palm and the porch light caught it, and my mother's ring fired a soft gold at the woman's careful fingers. My body moved before my thoughts did. I opened my car door, stepped into the chill, and crossed the street. The gravel under my shoes sounded louder than it is any other day. I walked up the path with my palms open, as if I were approaching a bird I hoped would not fly away. Lena looked up and her face went very still, the kind of still that means the mind is running fast. The woman in the gray coat held her breath. "Hello," I said, and my voice was steady, quiet. "Come inside, it's cold." The buyer looked from me to Lena and back again, her eyebrows lifted in worry. "I'm sorry, I can leave," she said, and her voice was kind. She held the ring the way you hold something that is starting to feel as if it is burning your skin. "No blame for you," I said softly. "This is a family matter, you will be safe." I opened the door wider and stepped back. "Please, come inside." The warm air reached for us like a friend who has been waiting, and we let it fold around our shoulders. In the living room, I gestured to the couch and the chair, the same places we sit to watch shows and fold laundry. "Please sit," I said. The buyer perched on the edge of the chair, and Lena took the couch, her hands clasped so tightly I could see the knuckles white. I went to the kitchen and put the kettle on because I did not know what else to do with my hands. The small light on the kettle flicked to life, a tiny star in the dim kitchen, and I breathed with it. I brought in a tray with 3 cups, a small pot of honey, and a plate of biscuits I had bought at the bakery that morning. I set the tray on the table and placed 1 cup before each of us. The buyer said, "Thank you," as if she were in a stranger's house in a different story. Lena did not reach for her cup. She looked at the ring in the buyer's hand and then at me, and I saw something break and something brace at the same time. "I know," I said, and the words came out almost on their own. "I saw the listing. I saw the camera footage." I paused because the next part mattered. "I have cameras in the shared rooms for safety." Lena's head jerked up and her eyes went wide. "Cameras? In every room?" she asked, and I heard the fear there, the way a person hears a door close. "In the rooms we all use, yes," I said gently. "The hallway, the living room, the front door. After my fall, Daniel set them up. I should have told you clearly. I'm sorry for that." I looked at the ring again, at the way the light kept finding it. "But Lena, this ring, it is my mother's heart." Her face crumpled. It was not the kind of crying that bursts out like a storm. It was the slow, quiet kind, like a river that has been held back too long and finally finds a way through. "I'm sorry," she said, and the words were small and true. "I wasn't going to keep it. She took a breath that shook. "I thought I could fix something quickly and put it back before anyone noticed. I know how that sounds, I know." "Tell me," I said, and I kept my voice soft. "Tell me the whole of it." She nodded and used the side of her hand to wipe her cheek, like a child trying not to be scolded. "It started with my brother," she said. "He needed surgery, and my mom asked if I could help. I said yes, because he's my brother, and because I always say yes. We made a plan, but then the car needed that repair, and then the student loan payment went up with the interest, and I thought I could stretch everything like a sheet to cover all the corners." She shook her head, almost smiling at her own foolish hope. "It kept slipping." She looked at the buyer, then back at me. "I didn't tell Daniel about the hospital payment," she said. "I didn't want him to think I was bringing too much trouble into our house. He's been working late, and I see his face when he thinks we're not watching, and I thought, if I can just solve one thing 1 month, he can breathe." Her fingers twisted together. "The bill was due today. I had to send something." I let her words settle around us. The kettle in the kitchen clicked as it cooled, a small sound to mark the end of its urgent task. The buyer, who had been holding the ring like a fragile bird, looked down at it and then up at me. Her face was open and kind. "I should go," the buyer said softly. "This is not my place. Please keep your ring." She placed it on the table between us with the careful respect people save for things that matter to other people. She stood, the gray coat folding around her like a quiet cloud. "I hope everything works out," she added, a simple blessing from a stranger. "Thank you," I said, and I meant it in many directions. "I'm sorry you were put in the middle." I walked her to the door, and she stepped out into the evening, leaving behind the faint scent of cold air and a moment that would ripple for a long time. When I turned back to the living room, Lena had not moved. She was sitting very straight, her hands now open on her knees, as if she had remembered that when you are afraid, you can choose to open your hands instead of closing them. I sat down across from her and looked at the ring on the table. It seemed smaller and larger at the same time. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, and I kept my tone like a blanket, not a wall. "Why didn't you tell Daniel?" She swallowed and met my eyes. "I didn't want to be a burden," she said, and the words came out flat and honest. "You took us in, you feed us, you've given us so much. And Daniel, he's proud, but he's tired. I thought this was my problem to solve. I thought if I asked for help again, everyone would see me as a problem instead of a person." "You are not a problem," I said. "You are not a burden, you are family." I felt the truth of it settle into the room like a weight that makes everything steadier. But trust needs light. It cannot grow where it is kept in the dark. She nodded and a tear slid down to her chin. "I know," she said. "I know. When I saw the ring, I remembered how you talk about your mother and I felt sick. I told myself I would take it back as soon as I sent the payment, that it would only be a day and no one would know. I told myself it was for a good reason. I told myself a lot of things." She let out a breath. I was wrong. I looked at the ring and thought about my mother's voice when she said, "Keep it safe." Safe is not only a lock. Safe is also truth and small steps and saying, "I need help," before your hands shake. I reached out and slid the ring gently toward me, just enough to break the spell of it lying between us like a question with no answer. From the hallway, I heard the familiar sound of a key in the front door. Daniel's footsteps followed, quick, and then careful as he stepped inside and took in the sight of us sitting together, the ring on the table, the 2 cups of tea, and the empty chair. He stopped in the doorway, and his face changed in layers, confusion, concern, and then a sharp awareness like a light turned on all at once. "What's going on?" he asked, and his voice carried the echo of someone who hopes there is a simple explanation, even when he knows there is. I looked at him and felt the ache of loving 2 people who were now standing on opposite sides of an invisible line. "Come sit," I said. "Please." He came forward slowly, as if the floor might give way, and sat next to Lena. He reached for her hand and she let him, and I saw both of them breathe. "There's something we need to talk about," I said, and I made sure my voice was steady and kind. "We will not break here. We are going to sit, and we are going to be honest." The words went into the room and took their place with the other things that mattered, the ring, the tea, the small folded napkins waiting to be unfolded. Daniel looked from me to Lena and back again. "Okay," he said, and I could see him gather himself. "I'm listening." Lena's chin lifted just a little, brave in a way that is quiet and real. The house held its own breath, like the moment before a storm breaks and the air changes, and you know the rain will be clean. I told them about the listing I had found and the photos on the white towel by the window. I told them about the message on the tablet and the woman in the gray coat. I told them about the cameras in the shared rooms, and I said again that I should have told Lena more clearly about them. I apologized for that, because responsibility is not a pie you slice and give away. It is a table you set for everyone who has a seat. Daniel listened without interrupting. His eyes went soft when I spoke about the ring, and hard when I spoke about the listing, and then soft again when I spoke about seeing Lena whisper those words. He turned to her gently. "Is it true?" he asked, and there was no anger in it, only a need to catch the shape of the truth. Lena nodded. "It's true," she said. "I wanted to send the hospital money today for my brother. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to disappoint you. I was going to put it back. I know that doesn't make sense. I was scared. I'm sorry." Daniel closed his eyes for a moment and then opened them. He squeezed her hand. "Thank you for telling me," he said, and his voice was rough and kind. He looked at me. "Thank you for not yelling." We sat there with the ring between us and the tea cooling and the sound of the clock in the hallway counting our breaths. The buyer was gone. The door was closed. The sky outside was turning the color it turns when the day is almost done and everything is more honest in that light. It was not time to solve everything. It was time to make room for everything. That is what honesty needs. A little table cleared, a little space to sit, a little patience to let each piece find its place. I folded my hands and looked at the two people I love. I felt the tiredness in my bones, the kind that comes from holding a heavy thought all day, and I felt the strength, too, the kind that grows when you decide to be kind on purpose. We were at the turning point, and the room knew it, and we knew it, and even the quiet knew it. I took a breath and held it for a second, then let it go. "We will talk," I said softly. "We will listen, and then we will decide what to do." The ring lay on the table, still and small, but it was not the only thing in that room that mattered. We had our voices. We had our hands. We had a long evening ahead to walk across a bridge we had not expected to have to build. We moved to the kitchen table because that is where my family has always told the truth. The living room holds stories. The hallway holds footsteps. The kitchen table holds the weight of what we need to say. I set the ring on a small saucer and placed it between us, not as a weapon, but as a reminder to be careful. The kettle was still warm. I topped up our cups. Lena wrapped her hands around hers like she needed the heat to stay steady. Daniel sat close to her. His shoulder touched her shoulder, and I could see how much love had to live in a small space when trouble sat down with it. "I want to tell you something," I said, and I felt the way my voice filled the room and then folded itself small again. "When your father and I were first married, we were not good with money yet. We were proud and hopeful. We had more plans than cash. One month the electric bill came due, and we did not have enough." I watched my hands while I spoke, because it helped me be brave. "I did not tell him," I said. "I took a bracelet that had been a gift from my aunt when I turned 18. Not an heirloom, not something like this ring, but special to me. I went to a pawn shop in a small strip mall. I walked in like a person who is not afraid, and I walked out with enough to pay that bill." I took a sip of tea and let the heat sit in my mouth. I told myself I would go back the next week and get it. The next week was not easier than the last. The bracelet sat there for a long time. I did not tell your father for months. I carried that secret like a stone in my pocket. I felt shame like a coat in the summer. Desperation whispers to you. It says, just this once, just to fix this one thing. It makes you small. Lena's eyes filled, and she nodded once, like a person recognizing a map. "I thought I could fix one thing," she said softly. I told myself the same words. Daniel looked at me, then at her, and I saw him fitting the pieces together with gentle hands. "I should have seen," he said. "I should have asked more questions. I am sorry I left you to carry it alone." He squeezed her fingers. "I'm sorry, Mom, that any of this touched your memories." Lena swallowed. "I am sorry for touching what was not mine," she said. "I am sorry I went into your den. I am sorry for taking the ring out of the box. I am sorry for listing it. I am sorry for letting my fear be bigger than my respect." "Thank you," I said. "Thank you for saying it in full." I looked at the ring, then back at them. This ring is a story. It is not a solution. It cannot fix a bill. It can only carry a voice. That is why it hurt. We sat in the quiet for a minute. The clock in the hallway ticked. The house did not rush us. Then I spoke about the cameras because that was a thread that needed light, too. "I want to talk about the cameras," I said. "They are in the shared rooms, the living room, the hallway, the front door. After I fell last year, Daniel set them up so he could check on me if I did not answer my phone. They help me remember where I put things. They make me feel safe when I am alone. They are not in the bedrooms or the bathroom. I thought that was understood. Maybe I did not say it clearly to you, Lena. That is on me." She nodded. "I saw the tiny lights," she said. "I knew there were cameras somewhere. I did not think about what they might see. I should have. I should have asked. I was wrong." I nodded back. Trust needs light. Secrets grow in the dark. I said it aloud so we could hear it and agree to build from it. "If I had told you more clearly about the cameras, you would have known what the house would witness. If you had told us about the hospital bill, we would have known what your heart was trying to carry. We all have something to say tonight." We made a small plan for the tea, because tea helps talk. Daniel stood to refill the kettle, and the small, normal act made everything feel possible. He moved with care, and I felt grateful for the way ordinary life holds us when big feelings try to take up all the space. "We need practical steps," I said gently, when the cups were warm again. "Words are good, but hands need to build something too." I looked at the cedar box in my mind. "First, the jewelry. I think we should put the heirlooms in a safe deposit box at the bank. Not because I am punishing you, Lena, because I am tired of fear sitting in this drawer. I can keep a few costume pieces at home for daily joy. We will visit the bank together, so you both know where things are." "Yes," Lena said at once. "Please, I want that. I don't want to be near them until we all feel better." Daniel nodded. "I'll take time off tomorrow morning," he said. "We can go when they open." He reached for the saucer and slid the ring a little closer to me, as if handing a small child to a mother. "This should sleep somewhere the worry can't touch it." "Next," I said, "we need to look at the numbers together. Not forever, not every day, just a simple meeting every Sunday afternoon. We'll sit at this table with tea and phones and a notepad. We'll list what is due this week, and what is coming, and what can wait. We'll call it a budget meeting, but it will also be a kindness meeting. We'll say one kind sentence to each other every time." Lena let out a breath that sounded like relief. "I can do Sundays," she said. "I would like that." Daniel smiled at her. "Me too," he said. "We can call it Sunday Tea and Plans." I smiled at the name. "Sunday Tea and Plans," I repeated. "Good, we will also make a small repayment plan, not because I need the money, because structure heals trust. We'll write down a small amount each month that you can manage without gasping. We'll put it on the calendar, not as a punishment, but as a promise. When it is done, we will have one more reason to trust the path we walked." Lena's eyes filled again, but her mouth found a small smile. "Yes," she said. "I want to do that. It will help me feel like I am making this right." "And the hospital bill," I said, and I touched the saucer with one finger. "It cannot wait. I am offering a small loan, no interest. We will write a simple note. You can pay it back gently over time. We will sign our names and fold the paper and put it in the drawer where the recipes go, not the locked one. That way, it lives with the everyday things. It will not grow big in the dark." Lena's shoulders shook with silent tears. She reached out, then pulled her hand back, then reached again. I covered her hand with mine. It was warm and trembling. "I don't know how to accept this," she said in a small voice. "I feel ashamed and I feel grateful, both at once." "It is all right to feel both," I said. "Two things can live in one heart. Hold them both for now." I gave her hand a gentle squeeze and then let go so she could wipe her eyes. We took out a lined notepad and a pen. We wrote the date and the amount. We wrote our names neatly. We wrote the words "no interest" and "Sunday Tea and Plans." We added a small smile next to the schedule because sometimes a simple drawing can hold a promise better than a paragraph. We all signed and then sat back. Daniel looked at me and then at Lena. "Thank you," he said softly, "for choosing conversation over blame." He rubbed his forehead and let out a sigh. "I have been working late and leaving you to make do. I will be more present. I will look at the bills with you. I will carry half." Lena nodded. "I will tell you everything, even if it is small," she said. "Even if I am embarrassed, I will not let shame make me quiet again." I looked at both of them and felt a small part of myself unclench. "I will speak clearly about what I need," I said. "I will not let politeness make me vague when I should be plain. I will say what is private in this house and what is shared. I will put a little note by the door that says, 'Cameras in shared rooms for safety.' Not to scare anyone, just to let the house say what I should have said with my mouth." We talked a while longer. We decided the spare den key would no longer hang on the back door hook. I would keep it in my pocketbook. If anyone needed it, they would ask. The den would be called Private Out Loud, the way some rooms are named Guest. Names help. When the tea was finished, I put the ring back into the cedar box. I held the box to my chest the way Lena had held the ring, and I felt my mother's voice soften inside me. "Sleep here tonight," I whispered in my mind to the ring. "Tomorrow, we will move you to a place where memory is not a daily responsibility." As I stood to rinse the cups, Lena asked the question that had been pressing at her lips. "Do you hate me?" she said, and the words were careful and afraid. "No," I said, and I came back to the table and put my hand on her shoulder. "I hurt, but I see the good in you. I do not hate you." I waited for her to breathe. Then I added, "You are not a burden, you are family." She closed her eyes and let 2 tears fall without wiping them. When she looked up, her face was calmer. "Thank you," she said. "I will work to be worthy of that." Daniel leaned his head toward mine a little. "You're a good mom," he said. "You're a good person." His voice cracked, and he did not seem embarrassed by that. "I love you." "I love you both," I said, and it felt like a clean sentence, simple and whole. The next morning, we went to the bank as soon as it opened. The teller had gentle eyes. She guided us to a small room where a manager explained the safe deposit boxes. We signed papers. It felt formal and also like a relief. When they took us to the vault, the cool air wrapped around us. I placed the ring, the pearl earrings, and the silver hairpin inside a small velvet pouch. I laid it in the metal drawer with both care and gratitude, as if I were setting a child down for a nap in a quiet room. I kept a few costume bracelets and a pair of bright earrings at home, the kind you wear to the store to buy bread when you want to feel a little colorful. The cedar box came back to the house with us, mostly empty now. I placed a small printed photo of the ring inside and the key to the bank box. It still smelled like stories. It would now hold the story of our choice to keep the precious things safe without fear. In the afternoon, Daniel wrote Sunday tea and plans on the calendar that hangs by the fridge. He drew a small teacup next to it. Lena arranged envelopes on the table and labeled them: groceries, fuel, savings, help for family. We put a few dollars in each to begin. It felt like planting seeds in a row, small but real. We also wrote the repayment plan on a card and taped it inside the pantry door where only we would see it. The numbers were modest. The months looked doable. Every small square was a step. We decided that when each month was done, we would check it off with a green pen and say out loud, "Good job," the way you would say to a child who remembered to tie their shoes. Sometimes grown people need to hear the same words. That evening, the house felt lighter. The walls did not feel like they were listening for a secret. The cameras blinked their small blinks, and no one tensed at the sight. We had put words around them. We had put boundaries around the rooms. We had put the heavy things in a box made for heavy things. And yet I felt the tug of my own need for air. I love my son. I love Lena. I love my home. Love also needs space to breathe. So I decided to spend a week with my sister Aisha, not to leave them in a punishment, to give them privacy and to give myself rest. I told them in the kitchen while we ate a simple dinner. "I am going to Aisha's for a week," I said. "You two can be here, just the two of you. Make your routine. Talk without my face at the table. I will bring back fresh recipes and news about her roses." Daniel nodded. "That might be good," he said. "We can try our new Sunday tea on our own and tell you what we learned." Lena looked both surprised and relieved. "We will take good care of the house," she said. "We will take care of each other." The next morning, I packed a small bag. 2 sweaters, a book, my slippers, nothing heavy. Before I left, I put a note on the fridge. In big letters, I wrote, "Heat the stew, water the fern, be kind to yourselves." I drew a little heart next to it, not to be cute, but because sometimes a small shape can hold a lot of feeling. Aisha's house smelled like cinnamon and laundry soap. She hugged me at the door and held on a little longer than usual. "You look tired," she said. "Come sit, I made tea." We sat in her kitchen, which is brighter than mine. She listened as I told her everything, from the off-center box to the woman in the gray coat to the papers we had signed. "You handled it with grace," she said. "You also need to take care of yourself." "I know," I said. "I am trying." She suggested something simple and wise. "Talk to someone," she said. "Not just me, a counselor. Let a stranger hold a corner of this with you. Let them tell you that your needs are not a burden either." I nodded. The next day, I called a counselor whose number Aisha had used before when her own life felt crowded. We made an appointment. I felt nervous on the way there, the way you feel when you are about to meet someone who will see more than your coat and your shoes. In the small office, with a plant in the corner and a soft lamp, I told my story. I spoke slowly. The counselor listened without hurrying me. I told her about the cameras, about grief, about the ring, about Lena's tears, about my own. I told her about my tendency to hold things close and to be polite when I should be plain. She nodded and said gentle things. "You are allowed to need what you need," she said. "You can say so without apology. Safety is not selfish. Neither is clarity. You can keep what keeps you safe and still be kind. You can set a boundary and still open your arms." I left her office feeling like my spine had grown an inch. I did not feel hard. I felt clear. On the walk back to Aisha's, I passed a small store and bought a simple wooden sign that said welcome on one side and privacy please on the other. It made me smile. At home, I would hang it on the den door and flip it to the side I needed, the way people flip signs in a shop window. Names and signs help us act as we mean. During that week, I did not hover. I sent one good morning message each day. "I hope your tea is warm," I wrote once. "I watered my heart today," I wrote another day, which made Aisha laugh. On Sunday afternoon, my phone chimed and a photo arrived from the kitchen at home. The two of them at the table, cups in hand, the notepad open, a green pen nearby. Daniel wrote, "First Sunday tea and plans, we did it." Lena wrote, "We said one kind sentence each. Mine was thank you for working so hard." His was, "I see how much you are doing." They also sent a picture of a small envelope with the word hospital crossed out and the word paid written in careful letters. They had used the loan. The receipt sat next to it. My throat filled, and I had to sit down. I felt the kind of relief that makes your eyes sting and your shoulders drop. On my last day at Aisha's, we sat on her porch with a bowl of cherries and talked about ordinary things. The light was soft. It felt like exhaling after a long breath. I thanked her for holding me up without telling me what to do. She said, "Sisters are for that," and kissed my cheek. When I came home, the house looked clean and calm. The fern on the stand by the window was green and lively. The note on the fridge was still there, with a little check mark next to heat the stew and another next to water the fern. Someone had added a third line under "Be kind to yourselves." It said, "We tried," with a smile. Lena was in the kitchen. When she saw me, she stood quickly and then paused, as if checking the new way we had promised to be. "Welcome home," she said. Her voice was steady. She had made a small tray with my favorite tea, the mint blend I like in the afternoon. There were 2 slices of lemon on a saucer and a biscuit on a small plate. On the table in front of my chair, she had placed the cedar box. "It is safe," she said, and she held my gaze. I picked up the box. It was lighter now, but it still carried the smell of cedar and thyme. I opened it. Inside lay 3 paper things, a photograph of the ring and the earrings printed in soft light, the thin metal key to the safe deposit box in a tiny envelope, and the deposit receipt with the box number and date. On top, there was a folded note in Lena's handwriting. "Thank you for trusting me again," it said. "I will keep the light on." I looked up at her. We both nodded. There was no need for big words. The air between us felt clear, the way air feels after rain. Daniel came in with flowers from the small stall near the corner, pale daisies and a few sprigs of green. He put them in a jar and set them on the table without a speech. We sat with our tea and let the house tell us it was glad to hold us. The cameras blinked their small blinks. The fern lifted its green hands. The calendar on the wall showed a green check on Sunday with a tiny teacup drawn next to it. The saucer sat empty. The ring slept in a box in a vault a few miles away, and in my heart in a way that felt different now. Less like a guard at a door, more like a picture in a frame on a shelf, where you can see it and smile without worrying it will fall. Before the evening settled, Lena spoke again, and her voice had that calm that comes after a storm. "I don't know how to measure sorry," she said, "but I will measure trust by what I do next." She looked at Daniel, then at me. "Thank you for not giving up on me." "We are all learning," I said. "We will keep learning." Daniel lifted his cup. "To Sunday tea and plans," he said. "To light," I added. "To family," Lena said, and the word sat in the room like a warm stone you keep in your pocket for courage. After tea, I hung the small wooden sign on the den door. I flipped it to privacy please and stood there a moment, then flipped it to welcome and smiled. Sometimes the truth is a door you can open and close with care, not a lock you snap shut out of fear. I walked back to the kitchen, where the flowers made their quiet brightness, and I felt the house breathe with us. That night before bed, I took the cedar box with me to the den. I placed it on the desk next to the lamp and turned the light low. I touched the photo of my mother's ring. I touched the envelope with the key. I whispered, "Safe," not to the objects, but to the feeling in my chest. I believed it. In the days that followed, we kept our small promises. We made lists with sensible lines. We crossed things off and said, "Good job." When worries tried to grow in the corners, we turned the light toward them and spoke. When something went well, we noticed it. We did not wait for only bad news to gather us at the table. And when Sunday came again, we brewed tea. We wrote our kind sentences first. Daniel said, "Thank you for the flowers every week." I said, "I see your effort." Lena said to me, "Thank you for telling me your story." We smiled in the way people smile when the room is filled with that gentle kind of hope that does not brag. I could feel a quiet repair happening. It was not quick. It was not loud. It was the kind of repair that holds because it is made of small stitches taken slowly. It was made of eyes meeting without flinching, of hands setting cups down gently, of paper notes folded neatly and put where they can be found. We had not erased what happened. We had placed it on the table, looked at it, and then set it in a box with other truths we carry. We had made room for something new to grow. We had chosen a way to live that let light in. And the house, with its cameras and its kettle and its creaking floors, felt like it agreed. I like to sit by the window in the late afternoon, when the light is gentle and the house is quiet. The fern lifts its green hands, and the maple outside the glass makes slow shadows on the floor. I keep the cedar box in my lap, the ring's box, the one that still smells like wood in memory. The ring itself sleeps in the safe deposit vault now, but in this box I keep its photo and the small envelope with the key. I look at the picture, and I feel the story without having to hold the gold. When I talk to you like this, I imagine you across from me at the table, a warm cup in your hands, the day soft around your shoulders. I hear the hallway clock give a steady tick, and I hear my own breath slow down. I think about what we lived through and what it taught me in a quiet way. Love is not a soft rug that hides dirt. It is a light that shows the dust so we can sweep together. It is tender, but it is also honest. I used to think safety meant locks and drawers and keys on hooks. Those things help, yes, and I still use them. But this house taught me that safety also means speaking up when your voice trembles and listening without rushing to blame. Secrets do not make us bad people, they make us lonely. Honesty is a bridge back, plank by plank, step by careful step. There is a tiny camera in the corner of our living room and another by the front door. At night, they blink like small stars. They can catch acts, they can show who stood where and what they held. But only conversation heals hearts. Only a warm seat at the table, a cup of tea, and a slow, honest sentence can soften a room that has grown stiff with fear. We keep a new habit now. Every Sunday afternoon, we brew tea and sit with a simple notepad. We write the week's bills and plans, and we say one kind sentence each before we talk about numbers. "Thank you for this week. I see how hard you tried. Let's keep going." It sounds small, but small kindness is a kind of glue. Sometimes there is laughter. Sometimes there is silence that feels safe instead of heavy. We use a green pen to check off what we finished, and we look one another in the eye when we do it. The calendar by the fridge holds our little victories in neat rows, and the house seems to breathe easier with us. At the end of each Sunday, someone always washes the cups and someone always says, "Good job," like a soft ribbon tied around the day. The cedar box is lighter now, but its work is not over. It holds the picture of what matters and the key to where it rests. I touch the box and remember my mother's hands, steady and warm, and I remember what I promised her. To keep safe what matters, to carry her voice forward with care, to choose love that is not just soft but clear. If you have stayed with me to this point, thank you. I feel your company, wherever you are, on a bus, in a kitchen with the kettle humming, in a room where the night is just beginning. Tell me where you are listening from. I read your notes, and I picture your windows and your tables, and I send a little wish across the space between us. Maybe there is a small secret in your house today, hiding in a drawer or under a careful smile. Maybe there is a hurt you are holding with two hands because you are afraid to let it be seen. I hope you find someone safe to tell. I hope you can be that safe someone for another. I hope the light in your rooms is the kind that lets you see the dust and sweep together without shame. I will keep my Sunday tea and my one kind sentence. I will keep my little wooden sign on the den door, flipping it to privacy please when I need stillness, and back to welcome when I am ready to share. I will keep asking for what I need without apology, and I will keep listening for what others need, too. I will keep choosing the slow repair, the simple plan, the steady breath. Thank you for sitting with me. If you feel it in your heart, leave a comment and tell me where you are listening from. I love knowing the cities and towns, the quiet streets and busy ones, the kitchens and porches that hold these stories. May there be peace in your home tonight. May there be a soft chair, a warm cup, and someone who will listen when you speak. And here is the hope I carry to the window, to the fern, to the cedar box, to you. May you keep safe what matters. May you find courage to speak before something precious slips away.